Hi, this is Jonathan with another SQL Skills Insider demo video. In this demo, I'm going to show how predicate order matters for extended events when working with extended event sessions in SQL Server 2008 R2 or higher. This demo is going to run on SQL Server 2012. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a stored procedure that is just designed to allow me to exceed a certain duration value. And what it does is it just does a wait for delay for whatever time frame we actually pass in as a parameter. The next thing I'm going to do is define an extended event session. And this event session is going to track when a statement within a specific stored procedure exceeds the last seen maximum duration. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to pull the object ID and database ID for our stored procedure exceeds duration procedure in the AdventureWorks 2012 database. And then we're going to create an event session called statement exceeds last duration. We're going to track the SQL Server module end. And the module end event is actually going to have our stored procedure completed event inside of extended events. We're going to collect the statement associated with what was executed to actually execute the module. And then we're going to filter our where clause by the object ID, the source database ID, and then we're going to use a special predicate called greater than max uint64. And what this does is it's a comparator that exists that maintains a state. So we're going to say the duration is greater than 1 second or the maximum duration that has occurred since the event session was actually started for this event. We're going to use our ring buffer target and set the maximum number of events just at 10. We're not actually going to collect a large number of events here. And the reason we're using dynamic SQL here is that within DDL, we can't actually do parameterization. So we have to concatenate our object ID and database ID predicates into the string dynamically. And then we'll go ahead and create our event session and start it on the server. So now that the event session is running, what we're going to do is we're going to run our stored procedure exceeds duration stored procedure. And it has a default of 50 milliseconds. We're going to run it for 1 second. Then let it run at the default again, then for 2 seconds, then back to the default, then for 1 second, and then back to the default again. And after we run this, we're going to use our X query to actually query our target information. And we're just going to break out the event name, the timestamp for when the event fired, the duration associated with it, and the statement that was actually executed. So here you'll see we only have 2 events. We have our 1 second duration event, which actually was 21 microseconds longer than 1 second. And we can see that from our statement showing that it executed with the 1 second parameter. The 50 millisecond default execution following that didn't actually get collected because it didn't exceed our duration filter. And then the next time that it runs, we get our 2 second duration. But you'll notice if we go back to our statement, we ran it again for 1 second. And because we had already exceeded the 2 second duration, it maintained that predicate state and allowed for that event to be filtered off of the event session. Now, to show why predicate order matters with a event session defined like this, we're going to change windows to another query. We're going to redefine our stored procedure, exceeds duration with a 50 millisecond default, and then we're just going to create a second copy called exceeds duration 2, also with the 50 millisecond default. And then we're going to dynamically create our event session again, and it's almost exactly the same. We're going to grab our object ID for stored procedure exceeds duration, the one we actually want to find, and we're going to grab our database ID, but we're going to change the order of the predicate here so that the greater than max uint64 predicator is filtering on the duration being 1 second first. And we're still going to use our ring buffer. We'll still put our object ID and source database, but the order matters here because this will first evaluate. And when you have a state maintaining predicate like greater than max uint64, every time it actually evaluates, it's going to change the state and store the new state if it exceeded the definition for that predicate. So in this case, if we run a stored procedure, any stored procedure that completes with a duration greater than 1 second, it's going to increment the internally stored value. So we'll go ahead and drop our event session, create it, and start it. And what we're going to do, we're going to run stored procedure exceeds duration with the default parameter set. And then we're going to run stored procedure exceeds duration 2. And we're going to give it a value of 3 seconds. And then we'll run our other stored procedure with a 1 second and 50 millisecond delay, and then a 2 second and 50 millisecond delay with the defaults between those. And when we run this, and then we shred our events out of the target, what we'll see is we actually collected nothing. And the reason that we collected nothing is our first execution of stored procedure exceeds duration 2 incremented the internally stored state for the greater than max uint64 predicator, and that is what got stored. So when we do our 1 second duration here, even though it failed on object ID and database ID for stored procedure exceeds duration 2, it incremented the internal value. So this duration no longer exceeds the maximum value seen, and that will short circuit the evaluation and it won't fire the event. So the order of your predicates matters very much inside of extended events, and it's important to keep in mind these types of things when working with one of the state maintaining predicates like greater than max uint64, or using something like package 0 counter as well. You always want to put the state maintaining predicate at the end of all the other predicate evaluations so that it only increments or changes the internally stored state when the event fully fires, not when it actually gets evaluated. So that's it for this Insider demo video. I hope you've enjoyed being a SQL Skills Insider, and we'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.